What's going on, everyone?
What's up, guys?
So, before we get started, special thanks to our audience, the OCS family, and special thanks, as always, to Nick and Matt. Matt from Almost Functional 40k on YouTube, and make sure to go check them out on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe, like, and share with all your friends. All right. First things first, how we want to start off here. As always, make sure we give a big war cry. Huh! Also, thank you to everyone who have subscribed, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please go do so now. I'll have a link available for everyone for Almost Functional 40k, Onslaught Gaming on YouTube, and Onslaught Gaming on Twitch as well. Special hug to our sponsor, Middle Spoon Nick Pratt, a very special subscriber to the show and a gifter of great audio equipment. Also, I want to give a big special thank you to our family sponsors, both Art of War and Hobby Goblins. Go check them out on YouTube for exciting content. Also, stay tuned to the end of the show. We're going to talk a little bit about OCS Episode 6. It's going to happen in 2 weeks. We're going to continue to tackle the Leviathan missions packet and new cheat codes for the missions for ATC. All right, Nick. Today you have something special for the Onslaught Gaming community. Go ahead, take the floor, please.
Thank you, Luce. So, hey, it's great to be here. We finally all made it to Tuesday. We've had this episode's been in the making for a long time. So, we're going over the Leviathan mission deck. So specifically, this is how to play tactical cards, like the tips and tricks for each of the 16 tactical cards, how to maximize your points, how to hit 35, 40 per game, ideally, and avoid the pitfalls of secondaries and so on. So
that's right. So make sure to pay attention, learn what you can learn. Nick has some great content for everyone today.
Yep. So we've got a if you can bring up that screen share, and we'll get into it. So
I got you, brother. I got you. Look how beautiful that looks. Nice.
Awesome. Yeah. And this is a sweet collaborative effort here between Lewis and I. We got this all looking pretty. So just to get into it. So I recommend for you guys following along, get your cards. They look like, you can see it here. They look like that. Everybody knows what they look like. So get your cards, follow along, and we'll just get into it right away here. All right. So basics of the tactile deck. 16 unique cards. As you play the game, it's a 5-round game, right? The most cards you can see is 11. If you use new orders, you can use it once per game, and then the most you can ever score is 10. So basically, how that breaks down is each card could score a max of 4, or sorry, each card you want to score for 4. Each card that you see, if you're trying to max your secondary, you want to get 4 off each card. So that's kind of like how it breaks down. The victory points per card that you score, if you look here, it ranges from a 2 minimum to 8 maximum. So your 8 max would be like your investigate signals, capture enemy outpost, and bring it down. And then some of them are low scoring, like for example, defend stronghold you can only score for 3. So you kind of want to some of this we'll get into at the end. It has to do with the low value versus the high value cards. So for the whole game, so by the time you hit end of battle round 5, the most secondary you can ever score is 40. Any secondary you score above that is going to be lost. So there's certain armies like if you play a lot of MSU, maybe like your Drukhari or your Nids, they can actually easily score 35 plus. They can go over 40. Nids because of Spore Mines and Gargoyles can actually go over 40, and you get no benefit for that at all. So going above 40 is bad. It means you're basically throwing away units. You're doing, you at that point you want to focus on primary instead to try to hit 100, which is the max score.
Right.
There is an article. One thing I'll reference here, like an external article that you can look up. I'll probably be able to put a link in the chat in a minute. Goonhammer has a tactical deck Math Hammer article that came out about 6 or 8 months ago that shows some of the stats for each for the secondary play. It's kind of a strategy guide similar to what we're doing here of how to kind of play it correctly and so on. So hopefully this is going to be just a better, more digestible version of that. All right, so getting into it, the way I have this broken down is for oh, sorry. Here we go. So card mechanics. So this is like think of this kind of like as like poker. So everyone's got the same deck, and then these are the actual mechanics of how you draw, how you score, how you discard, and so on. Because there's a couple different mechanics here. If you ever played Magic the Gathering, you could think of it a little bit like that. It's just far less complicated because there's no deck building. So going over some of the card mechanics here, you'll draw two. You draw 2 cards immediately after gaining CP. This always happens at the start of your command phase before anything else. So that's really important. The timing is very, very important. So for example, you would never draw cards at a different time. You would only ever draw at the beginning of the beginning of the command phase. Then it would be like all other abilities in the command phase, and then it would be end of the command, and then you do battle shock, and then after battle shock, that's when you score primary, right? So the sequencing of the command phase matters a lot here. And then there's 2 basically abilities you can do here. One of them is a once per game stratagem for 1 CP. So it's new orders. So you immediately spend your CP once per game, discard 1 and draw a new one. So what that does, it's basically a cycling mechanic. You can only ever do this once per game. And you do want to hold it. This is a very, very strong mechanic. Most of these once per game, there's 2 once per game mechanics I can think of that are universal in 40k. One of them is going to be the new orders. A lot of times you're going to want to save this for 4 or 5. I recommend to save it for 4 or 5 so you can close a scoring gap try to get lucky if you're especially in a losing game. So a lot of times I'll recommend to save new orders for 4 or 5. Another one would be Insane Bravery. Insane Bravery is auto pass leadership, and you have to do it before you roll 1 CP, but it's only once per game. That's another one where it influences the primary secondary scoring as well, and you're going to want to save that for when you really need to get those points. But you don't want to put a lot of times you don't want to put points up to chance, because if you lose 5 or 8 or 10 points because you failed a battle shock, that can decide the game, right?
On the new orders, I have on plenty of occasions used it in one of the first couple turns, just because if I get 2 cards that I can't score, especially if I go second and my opponent got 2 cards they scored early, easily the first turn, like I really don't want to fall that far behind. So I wouldn't say always save it for the end. Like there's some situations where you want to use it early. I've done that plenty of times and found it worked well for me.
Yeah, that is a good point. That's a situation that you can run into because of the randomization, where if you, like for example, if you go first, so start a battle round 1, you draw like Bring It Down and Investigate signals, maybe you score Investigate for 2 or 4, but then, it's really hard to score Bring It Down on top of 1, right? So...
Yeah, especially if it's not something you think you're going to be able to hold for next turn, or like you don't really need the sometimes just go ahead and burn it and...
Oh, that was the other...
the deck.
It wasn't Investigate, it was Capture. Getting Capture on... There's a couple of these where it's like, if you draw it on 1, you're always going to feel like you got screwed. But there's a balancing mechanic here, and that's kind of what we're getting into here.
But if the score is close, save it. But if you feel like they're getting ready to run away, sometimes it's worth using.
Yep. So something you can do is most of these score at the end of the turn. So if we look at the score timings here, the cards actually score at different times, right? So 11 of these cards will score at the end of your turn. So that's the standard. 4 of them, the 4 kill cards. So there's the 4 kill cards are Assassinate, Bring It Down, No Prisoners, and Overwhelming Force. Those actually have a preferential timing where they can score at the end of any turn. And that matters because there's things like Overwatch that can kill things. There's shoot on death, there's fight on death. There's a lot of mechanics in the game that can help you, and ongoing combats as well, right? So if you win an ongoing combat and kill a unit, so the kill cards are extremely good because they'll score at the end of any turn. The reason the score timing matters is because the only time you draw is at the start of your turn. So you don't want to like have dead cards that you're just holding that are just stale. Like the cards get stale. Like it's the same way that like the milk in your fridge gets stale, right? You don't want to be holding a card for 2 or 3 turns because it's just dead. It's dead in the water.
So just a quick comment from Justin. Turn 1 is probably the one time I would say there are enough landmines that it's very, very rarely worth using. I would agree. Yeah, it's situational. I would say so.
Yeah. having another thing that can come up is because of the randomization. Having when you're just drawing 2, there's still 14 left in the deck, like Justin said, 100%. And you don't want to have 2 dead cards, but having 2 dead ones on turn 1 is not bad. Because you can think of it like, oh, if I get these 2 crappy ones out of the way on turn 1, I'm gonna be in a more defensive position to counter. Not only is my army gonna be in a more defensive position to counterpunch better as the game progresses, I'll also have more live cards in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
So it sets you up. It's similar in Magic, like when you cycle. Cycling is you basically take a card, you get rid of it, and then you get another card, right? Or you're getting rid of the bad cards and replacing them with good cards. Essentially, is the premise of that. And basically the mechanic for holding a card, I recommend to never hold a card for more than 1 turn, unless you're like planning because you're going to score it, right? So if you, for example, a good one would be like area denial. Area denial is put a unit in the center. So it's just based on position. That's it. If you're playing World Eaters, if you're playing I don't know, there's all these armies. If you're playing Custodes, there's all these armies that don't mind being in the center, and they actually want to be on the center, right? Because you're scoring a center objective, you're doing melee combat, you're closing the gap between your army and the enemy. So if you're not able to score area denial, maybe just hold it for 1 more turn, and then you're just going to move and score it, and it's going to be over. So there's a lot of cards like that where you might just want to hold it because you have to be. I would say you want to be about 80-90% sure, very very sure that you're going to score it. There's certain cards that you don't want to hold. A good example of that would be like Capture Enemy Outpost, because as soon as your opponent sees that you draw that and then you hold it, they're gonna move back, they're gonna screen out their outpost, and they will make you unable to score it, right? So they're gonna make it a dead card. So you want to be aware of that. That's a little bit more of an in-depth strategy there. And then the last thing here with mechanics is the value assessment. So if you're trying to score 40 by the end of the game and max the score on this, each card that you see basically will have to score for 4. And then so think of it as like 4 is like the perfect round number of like how much you'd want to score off an average score.
So Max has a question. Can we walk us through the nuance of list building for fixed secondaries versus tactical? What should we keep in mind? So I'll let Nick answer the second portion, but we're going to do tactical today. We'll talk about more fixed in the future, and Nick, take it over. What we should keep in mind.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. So yeah, we're definitely focusing more on tactical here, but fixed, I would say for fixed, there's 2 combinations. So there's basically 2 sets of 2 that people like to take that are commonly played. So there's one that I will often take, but that depends on the opponent. So you're not building your list for it. It's dependent on their list. And that combination is Assassinate, Bring It Down, which is literally just kill stuff. It's kill characters and kill vehicles, right? So that is a great combination. And then you're not looking at your army at all. You're really just looking at their army. So if they're playing, let's say they're playing Tau and they have, 27 crisis suits, you're probably gonna take that because each crisis suit is worth 2 points on fixed. So if you just if you interact or kill any number of their stuff, another example would be like Sentinels, like Imperial Guard Sentinels. There's there's all these parking lot lists. There's also Knights is a good one. Knights probably have their whole army's vehicles, right? So Bring It Down is basically it can easily be just playing the game. You're gonna get at least 15 points probably if you just play the game normally. And then if you win the game, you're probably gonna hit like 25 on that, and it caps at 20, right? So yeah, so that's the first one. The second one that is commonly played is the more passive one, and that's taking Cleanse and what was the other one? Cleanse and Deploy. So you can take Cleanse and Deploy together. That's a really good combo because what that allows you to do is an army that will do this that I've seen very, very effective. I've seen a good Custodes player score 97. Like he goes into the game and says, I'm gonna I have my Custodian Guard, I have my Wardens, I'm gonna stand on these objectives, and you can't come fight me because I'm gonna trigger fights first, right? So because you're not gonna just charge into instant death. And they just stand there. They have any unit can do these actions now. So you do your cleanse with one unit, and then you do your deploy with another unit, and it's basically you have to be 6 inches from the center, so you can be in a nice building in the GW rune, and then cleanse is so you're going to score 3 off that and 3 off that, so you're going to put up like 6 to 9 points every turn, just from standing around, right? So that's a really good way to do passive scoring. However, I have a feeling, I know people have been getting a little bit salty about that sort of playstyle where you're it's called non-interactive, and that may be changed in the upcoming version of the game. So if you like to do that, I mean, it's definitely a viable thing for certain armies. If you have lots of units that like to stand around and do actions, but it's not. The thing is, it's not as fun as tactical. Tactical is actually very fun, and it makes it easier to actually get It makes it, you have to work for it, but you can get a higher score doing tactical versus fixed. So,
and
a lot quicker as well. Yeah.
And if you were building a tactical list, you want units that are fast and can react to the cards you draw, and some units that can do actions that you're not going to miss their offensive output if you need them to cleanse or deploy or just give up their, and you'll probably lose them. So you either need small units that you can throw away to do these actions and you don't mind losing, or something that you can throw out and will survive that's super, super tough, because to do these actions most of the time you're putting yourself in the line of fire to achieve these secondaries.
Yeah, and I guess as a general answer to that question, I usually don't recommend taking fixed, and I also I don't recommend like building your list into it. As a general list construction thing, just for scoring just for playing Warhammer in general. So this is just if you go to a tournament and you're going to play Warhammer, think about each of your lists. Think about the way you're building your army. You want to set aside about 200 points minimum, and those 200 points of your army are going to be for scoring and screening purposes, right? So start with about 200. So that's 200 is 10% of your force, right? So that's going to be the classic units that do this. It would be like your Biovore, your Space Marine Scouts, your Mandrakes, your Eldari Rangers. Each army has these units that fall into that category. So that's really good advice I can give, especially for newer players. Is start at about think about 200, set aside, just so you can score all the secondaries.
Yeah, and I would also say fix is very situational, right? Like I'll expand on Nick's point a little bit as well. If you're playing into Knights, like P King is saying that he cries in Imperial Knights. First of all, how do you cry in Imperial Knights? And and second off, right? It's very situational. If you're playing into Imperial Knights, or if you're playing into something very specific that has a lot like Assassination, where they have a ton of characters, you might want to tech into that for that particular game, but you don't want to build army lists based on that, right? You're not going to run into a lot of events that are going to have assassination or specific missions that play into a lot of characters, or adding a lot of characters into your units, right? So very situational. It's more at the table where you're going to have to kind of base your strategy on what you want to do and take fixed or not. Now, I have seen that taking fixed missions for a particular event to kind of maybe, let's say, hold you down, kind of throw you down a peg a little bit, because tactical can get up very quick in points, right? You can ramp up on points very quickly. Fixed kind of mellows that out a little bit. So if you're going to a more novice, softer event, right, then you might want to try a little bit of fixed, see how that works out for you. But if you're going to any major GTs and things like that, tactical is probably most of the time, if not all of the time, the way to go.
Yeah, every once in a while, if you're playing Imperial Knights, maybe you do take. Let's Bring It Down, one of the ones that you can take as fixed. I think it is.
Yeah.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, so sometimes you'll run into a situation where, like, you know what, I think it's better this time, but I'd say 95% of the time, tactical is the better option.
Yeah. There's a little
good for Eldar too.
Yeah, it's got the little paper-looking symbol.
That little paper symbol in the corner.
Yep. And there's 7 of them, so everyone's aware, right? There's 7 of them out of the 16 cards that you can choose.
Yeah.
7 fixed.
My camera's kind of. It looks like that, but yeah.
There you go.
Right, cool. Oh yeah, there you go.
Yep.
All right, and then there was one more mechanic here that we didn't mention, which is important. So it's the discard mechanic. So at the end of your turn, so this is basically after you score, if eligible, The way these secondaries work are if you score them and the scoring condition is met, you have to score them. So for example, let's say that you get investigate signal and you only scan for one corner. So you scan your corner and that's worth 2 points and that's it. You can't hold it or do it a second turn or anything like that. It has to score, and it has to score at the end of your turn as the card reads. So you can't do like a double score or a multi score where you try to avoid scoring a small to try to get the big. You have to score it for as the way the card reads. The discard is really useful though. So the discard is at the end of the turn, you can discard 1 or 2 cards. You gain 1 CP if you discarded any. Correct. And the reason that this is important is CP is huge. So there's a little bit of a good thing here. A lot of times, if you're trying to do some combo, or you're trying to use all these stratagems and do some big all-in play, you may need an extra CP. Because you're going to need to reroll a charge. You're going to have to use a +1 to wound strat, and then you're going to have to use a grenade strat or something like that. So you've got this kind of like attack planned out, and usually just more CP is always better, because more CP is more damage, essentially. So what that means is turn 1, especially turn 1 and turn 2 when you're setting this up, discarding a card is actually fine. So if you draw capture outpost turn 1, and then you have to discard it, that's totally fine, right? Because you're going to not only are you going to use the CP, you weren't going to score it anyway, right? Because you're playing Tau. so it's so there's all these like good benefits you get from discarding a card. I guess it's worth noting that you would lose the benefit from discarding if you have CP generation by other means, which would be like there's certain characters like in Space Marines you have like Azrael and Marnius Calgar that just give you a CP for free. So you can't discard as well to get extra if you're already generating CP. So not every army generates CP. The ones that don't, so I know for example Thousand Suns has no way to generate CP, right? I guess maybe Cultists, but nobody takes those. But certain armies have no way to generate CP, so discarding is excellent for them. Armies that get the auto CP every turn for just having a model alive that's standing around, I think what is that? Sisters, Space Marines can do it. There's a number of armies. You get a little bit less value off of the discard. So that's the only thing I would consider there.
And for those of you who think of plan on using the new orders can only be used once per game. So if you have a bad card, right, before you're going to get your new CP, before you actually start the battle round itself, right, make sure that you understand within the Leviathan rules, right, if people could see this, because a lot of people forget about the Leviathan pamphlet, right? Mm-hmm. With new orders, you can only do that once per game. So keep that in mind, please.
Yes.
Yeah, and I reckon we're not going to go over the pamphlet directly, but that pamphlet, everyone forgets about it, and it has all it has all the organized play rules. It's super important.
But we will at the end of this show.
Oh, okay, yeah, perfect. All right, and then another question from Max: should players be prioritizing utility units for elimination, or worry about more of the big hammers running at them? This is a really good question. So yeah, this is a completely valid strategy. So if you look at your opponent's army and you see that they have their scouts are in the open, or their what's another unit? They're scouts, mandrakes. You see all these like scoring units that they don't do damage, but that's going to be their scoring piece. A lot of times it's like scouts do an uppy downy, mandrakes do uppy downy, swooping hawks is another one. There's these units where when you see them, that's their scoring potential, right? So if you kill it and then they draw investigate on the next turn, you just denied them points. So it is a valid strategy, and it's generally a good strategy. It's not always the right strategy, but I would say, based on my experience, I would say 3 out of 4 times that you have the opportunity to kill these scoring units, killing them is the right choice. So killing the scoring units is huge, and also protecting and defending your scoring units until it's time to score is huge. So because it's like, think about it, like if you take scouts, it's a scoring unit. Like they're there to score. They're not there to shoot rocket launchers, right? So like you don't want to put your scout unit in the open just so you can fire a rocket launcher when the whole reason you took the unit is just to score. Also, once they do score, so like once you have them deployed, they've scored the secondary, they've done the cleanse or the area die or whatever. At that point, they're just anything else is just gravy at that point. They've already done their job.
Yep. And if you've already mentioned, Nick, that they can't do this on the 5th battle round and discard and get a CP, correct?
Yeah, because it would be the end of your turn, so it wouldn't do anything at the end of the 5th battle round. Yeah.
Correct. Yep. So no CP gen in the 5th battle round. Also, we have another question from Max. Should players be prioritizing those utility units?
Oh, I got that one.
Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I just answered that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry about that. I didn't catch it.
Okay.
Sorry,
Cool.
Max.
So does anyone have anything else to add into the card mechanics?
No, I think you covered that fairly well.
All right, cool. So now we're gonna get in the actual nitty gritty of the cards themselves here. All right, so I call this, basically I have this split into 4 categories, and think of it as like it's a 4x4. So I group them up like this because it makes it a lot easier to conceptualize what kind of card you drew. If you think about it as like a good or a bad or a difficult or a hard, it makes it a little bit easier to score. Or it makes it easier to plan because there's a lot of planning. As you know, Warhammer strategy game, you can plan anything you want, and then your plans are either going to be successful or they're going to fall apart, and then you can replan. So the missions are just like that. It's the same basic idea. You draw the card, you come up with a plan, and then you want to, at that point, you actually want to pre-measure. So this would be at the start of your command phase. You want to start pre-measuring, and you want to be like, can I even score this? Is this even possible? You'll draw. Let's say you draw capture enemy outpost on turn 2. It's like, well, my unit can move here, and then I have to make an 11-inch charge, and then you'd have to then I have to pile in, and it could be this entire Rube Goldberg going on, and to just see if you could even score something. And then you have to decide, well, what's the probability? Like, how likely is this? Am I going to die in Overwatch? Are you gonna fight on death? There's all these things that can happen that can ruin your plan. So that's why it's categorized. It helps with the planning. So category 1, kill missions. These are the ones that just killing stuff. And then these can score on either player's turn, and they score at the end of the round, but they score upon the death of a model or unit. So starting off with the first one, assassinate. This is one of the best ones. It's just kill 1 character model for 5 EP.
It's great for Eldar.
This is really good. It scores. Characters are everywhere in 40k. Every army plays characters, and they're all very, very strong. This scores also because you have to have an HQ. You have to have a warlord. Every army is required to include 1 character. So that means, and also this is one that scores retroactively. It's worded in a way that says if all the characters in your opponent's army are dead, you'll still score. You'll auto score the 5 off of this. So this card is really just fantastic. It's always good, and the retroactive scoring is just really good as well. The next one is Bring It Down. This one is a little bit more granular. This is one of the high value cards. So basically, you're going to score, each vehicle is worth 2, and then it scales up. I'll read the card so I can. You're going to get an additional 1 for each of the bullet points. There's 3 bullet points. The first one is if the destroyed model had a wounds of 10 or more, and then the next one is wounds of 15 or more, and then wounds of 20 or more. So 20 or more is going to be like your Rodigus or your Great Unclean One or your Imperial Knight or something. So that's going to be worth 5 on tactical, or no, 5 on fixed and 6 on tactical for just killing one super big thing. There's a rider on the bottom. Basically, tacticals give you an extra 1 point. We're going to focus more on the tacticals here, so we'll just assume that for when we go through these, that we'll assume the tactical points are being scored.
And that's 1 point per card, not 1 point per kill, right?
1 point per card, yeah. Yeah. So let's say that you go and you draw a Bring It Down, and the only thing you can kill is like 1 Scout Sentinel. On tactical, it's going to be worth 3 because you get 2 for just killing the Sentinel because it's a vehicle. It doesn't have 10 or less wounds, so no additional points from that, and then you just get an additional 1 because you're taking tactical. So
yeah, and if for some reason you kill 2 Scout Sentinels, you get 5, not 6.
Right, and then a full unit of 3 Scout Sentinels or Armored Sentinels would be worth 7.
Yeah.
So, and Sentinels, you guys probably know Sentinels are pretty easy to kill, and they also like come back from the dead because they can respawn. So if you're thinking about scoring Bring It Down and your opponent and you're thinking about should I let those Sentinels come back or do I want them to come back? The answer may very well be yes. You want them to come back so you can farm points off of them.
Correct.
And just so everyone knows, if you play Nick Pratt, his crisis suits are also vehicles, so get all the points off him.
There's 2 vehicle units. I'll just mention this because it matters for Bring It Down. There's 2 vehicle units in the game that I'm aware of, or actually, there's Sisters of Battle have them too. There's the Sisters of Battle suits, like the Nundums. Those are vehicles. There's Crisis suits are vehicle units. Broadside suits are vehicle units, and then Sentinels, Scout, and Armored Sentinels are also vehicle units. Everything else, for the most part, is usually individual models. So it's an easy.
And coming to a table near you soon, I'm gonna have a bunch of Mauler Fiends.
Oh no!
Which are vehicles as well. And
great.
maybe a Lord of Skulls in there as well for like 6 or 7 vehicles. So.
But when you fight the all crude army, people are going to start bringing. You're not going to get any points for Bring It Down.
Yeah, this goes a little bit into what Max was saying. So there is an interesting give and take here with Bring It Down. Bring It Down is important because Bring It Down is one of the highest scoring tactical cards at 8, and 8 is a lot. 8 means it's a double value card. If you can score this. So this has to do with like running the parking lot. So some of the dichotomy here is, if you want to play an all vehicle list, sure, go ahead and do it. You just have to be aware that you're going to give your opponent lots of points if they choose to take Bring It Down, and a lot of good players will take Bring It Down because it's so easy to score.
Correct.
So you do have to plan for that. That is something that you plan around in list construction. You have to make sure. And I think what that means in terms of like a differential in scoring between when you're playing Warhammer is, if you're going to play the parking lot and you're giving up Bring It Down, you want to make sure that you can score secondaries on your end. So that also means that you're going to need to either dominate primary, like for example Chaos Knights dominate primary, or you're going to need scoring units like your Nurglings, your Scouts, whatever, that are gonna close the gap that because they're gonna be at an innate advantage from having Bring It Down. So that's more of like an in-depth analysis.
Primary, cleanse, and deploy teleport homers just in case.
Oh yeah, we'll get into that. These are the ones that everyone loves. The kill secondaries are the easiest ones to score. The hard ones are category 4. When we get to cat 4, that's going to be all the in-depth stuff. So more about Bring It Down. This
did you see Max's question? You already took care of it?
Oh, here.
What are the panel members' least enjoyed secondaries? Why? Can you provide example scenarios?
Yeah, I don't.
Let's talk about it.
That I really hate, other than Investigate's probably the one I like the least.
Me too.
Because it's so annoying to try to get to the 4 corners. Like, it just
And
everything else.
Leaders.
What goes opposite? Everything else can do and still move toward the opponent. This you're just going towards out to the middle of the corners and then out of position for anything else.
Yeah, it's a really tough. Mine is easily by a mile. It's Defend Stronghold, and we'll explain why. We have it in here. But
we're going to argue about that because I love that one.
Yeah, I'm going to say Defend Stronghold by a mile, but Investigate is actually very difficult. Investigate's probably like the most challenging to score. So yeah, that's definitely valid. So another thing with Bring It Down is this one does not score retroactively like Assassinate. So what that means is there's certain armies where they just have no vehicles or monsters at all. So an example of this would be, I know there's a Canopic Court list right now that's pretty good, that has it's all infantry and beasts, right? It has no vehicles, no Catans. There's also like a very good Custodes list that's played commonly that has no vehicles or monsters at all. No rhinos, no tanks, whatever. What that means is that card, if you draw Bring It Down into that opponent, which is fairly likely to happen because you could draw it every game, they just zero it out. So it's completely dependent on your opponent's list if you can even score it, which it actually just sucks, and that's a benefit to Custodes and some of these other armies that just don't play vehicles or vehicles and monsters. So okay, so moving into the next one, these ones are a little bit simpler. No prisoners is just kill any unit. Kill 1 for 2 VP, 2 for 4 VP, and then 3 is worth 5. So this is super simple. There's no tricks to this or anything.
Yeah, Lorenzo, we'll get to your question as soon as we get to that one specifically.
Yeah, no, Lorenzo made a very good point there. So he says, I've always played Overwhelming Force wrong, meaning if the unit made a reaction move off of the objective, it doesn't count anymore. Correct, and that's a really important distinction. Overwhelming force, when you draw that, it actually, think of it as like a scan. So as soon as you draw that card, it scans the board. So each individual unit that's touching an objective will count at that point. So a thing you might want to do is when you draw that and you're not cycling it, you might want to just say like, okay, you've got 2 eligible units here, you've got 1 eligible unit here, and then that's it. So so if I were to kill all 3 of those things, that's worth like 9 points, and then and then overwhelming caps at 5. So overwhelming is kill 2 of those eligible units. One is worth 3, and then 2 is going to be worth the max of 5.
And that's also one. I mean, this whole category, but a lot of people don't realize that one can be scored on either player's turn as well.
Correct. Yeah. So all 4 of these, category 1 is, these are the best cards. They can score on any turn. They help you if you can. There's all these mechanics in the game. There's things like so things that happen that can trigger these to score. If you're holding them from your turn, they can score on the opponent's turn. So here's some of the things that can trigger them: explosions, fight on death, heroic intervention, ongoing combats, Overwatch, and then there's a couple other ones too. But those are the big ones that I can think of that'll cause these to score on your opponent's turn, which is fantastic, because if you hold the card, score it during the same battle round, and then on your turn you're just going to draw another card and keep scoring, right? So that's exactly it's hard to set up, but when it happens, it's going to put you ahead. It bumps you ahead. So.
Although my favorite way to score it is when David perils and kills one of his own psychers on his turn.
That's yeah, I've seen all of this stuff happen. So it's the kill ones are probably the most fun. It always feels fun. All right, so we're gonna go into category 2 now. Category 2 is the primary complement missions. So I give it these funny names, but basically these just get more intense and more challenging to score as they go up. And you're going to notice that some of these are actually extremely easy to score, because we're only in category 2. We're nowhere near to 4 yet.
Because these you can almost accidentally score just by playing primary.
Exactly. So what I mean by primary complement is exactly that. Exactly what Matt said. So you're playing Warhammer anyway, and then hey, surprise, you just scored your secondary too. So these are among the best ones in the deck. A lot of times these are really great to score turn 1. Defend Stronghold has the reshuffle turn 1. I believe there's 2 missions. There's Storm Hostile and Defend. They can't score turn 1. So if you were to draw them during the first battle round, you would set it aside, draw another one off the top, and then reshuffle.
I wish Capture had that same thing on it.
And and Capture, they probably need to eradicate that. Capture Enemy Outpost does not have that. So that and it stinks, because it's not. I've seen someone score it on bottom of 1, but on top of 1, I don't think you can really.
No, it's very unlikely.
Yeah, it's almost impossible to score on top of 1. Bottom of 1, maybe if you have Advance and Charge or some 28-inch Magnus or some jank like that, you can do it. But
drop pod or something, and your opponent does something dumb.
But even then, first battle round, it's going to be just a CP. Just think of it as a CP for the most part. So
I like these because half the time I'm like, oh, I'm gonna do what I was already planning on doing. I don't have to do anything different this turn.
Yep. So extend battle lines, control your home objective, and 1 no man's is worth 5. And then if the rider's like a little clause at the bottom that lets you score in a weird scenario. So the weird scenario for this one is if you only have 1 unit left alive, you can just hold 1 no man's land for and it's worth 2 instead of 5. So this is just extremely easy. This is like this is an amazing turn 1 draw. There's no tricks or anything for this one. Another one here, kind of in the same category, secure no man's land. Just hold 1 no man's land objective for 2 VP, and then hold 2 objectives in no man's for 5. Exactly, there's no tricks. Exactly what it sounds like. So area denial, this gets a little bit more granular here with area denial and defend. So area denial, this symbol here with the skull, this means battle shock units are not eligible to score this. So you have to have 1 unit wholly within 6 of the center, and then no enemy unit wholly within 6. So it's going to check wholly on both of the units basically. That's worth 5. So that would be the max score. I would say it's good to have. This applies to every army in Warhammer. It's good to have a cheap, fast, maybe a scout unit, maybe something like a piranha, or maybe a squad of outriders. there's all these fast units that can just deploy on the line and then fly over, score area denial turn 1. Scoring area denial turn 1, I would say, is important, and it's something that you want to dedicate a unit in your list to doing, because as soon as you take that thing that's going to score that out of your list, you're going to start drawing area denial turn 1 every game, and you're going to lose a lot of points. So definitely think about area denial a little bit when you're making your list. And there's actually, this is really good because there's a rider here too. So if there is an enemy unit wholly within 6 of the center, but not within 3, so and it's notice it's not wholly, it's just within 3 at all, then it denies 2 points. It knocks it down to only 3-point score.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had people, because it says it doesn't mention you having a unit again on that part, I've had people try to score that without them having any unit there. But I believe you still have to have your unit within 6, just the enemy not within 3, even for the rider.
Correct. Yeah. You'll still have the, so regardless, you'll have to have your unit wholly within 6 for both scores, no matter what. So you can't. This isn't like the action one. It's different than, what's the other one? Deploy teleport. It's different than deploy teleport homers, because deploy homers just says within. This area denial specifies wholly within, so it's every part of the base, the whole unit, the entire hull of the tank or whatever.
Justin,
So
you're right. Yeah, it's a challenging one, but people should be measuring.
Yeah. Well, the 3 inches is easier for me, but yeah, the 6 inches I have to break out the tape measure.
Yep,
yeah,
absolutely.
and this is something you need. It needs to be measured because of the wholly. It makes a very small circle.
Yep.
Because it's basically just a 12-inch wide circle, but then anything that's trying to score this has to be completely within that 12-inch circle. So think of it in a spatial sense. Just think of the center point of the table as like a 12-inch diameter circle, and then that's it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Max says, are Outriders viable now?
When Space Marines on motorcycles are always viable, especially as cheap as they are. There's definitely uses for them.
I would say a 3-man. What is it? 3-man units now, right?
You can take a 3-man.
Yeah. They're cheap. They're only 80 points now. I would say Outriders are. They're fine. They're fine for what they do.
They auto advance.
Yeah.
They can get out there, score, and die. I mean, that's
for 80 points, you take 1 unit and you get that aerial denial. Yeah.
Well, you can stick the ATV now in there with them. It's like what? Still only like 150. And that's a lot of T5 wounds to dig through.
I think that's a lot of commitment for aerial denial.
I'm not talking about just for area now. I'm just talking about for that unit in general.
But yeah, Matt, if you're trying to score area denial,
you're looking at 20 T5 wounds when you put the ATV in there.
Another thing with area denial, because for example, you don't want the ATV if you're trying to score area denial. You want the smallest footprint possible. So
Absolutely.
No, but I like them for other objectives and stuff. Just denying the board to still put out a lot of shots.
Yep.
Yeah, Justin, that's a good point. Yeah, you using the Age of Sigmar objective on the table. That's actually that's actually valid. I like that idea. So anytime you're trying to do aerial denial, just pull out your Age of Sigmar objective marker. Yeah, no, that's good. I like that.
Yep, exactly. And then the last one in this category. So this is really weird. This is a weird one. This is defend stronghold. So this is a very easy one to score, but there's a lot of the mechanics of this is what makes it my least favorite, and I think it's terrible. I actually wish that they would replace this and just put a different card in the game, maybe just another kill card, because all the kill ones are very fun, and this one is just very, very boring. And it so here's what this is. It's hold your home. So reshuffle turn 1. You can't score at turn 1. It's kind of sucks. It's just hold your home objective, and then you have to hold it on your turn. Once you get to your opponent's turn, you score 3 if you hold your home objective at the end of your opponent's turn. This is the only card that you have to hold, and it has a delayed scoring. This is also, for some reason, I don't know why, this is also the lowest scoring card in the deck, because you can only score it for 3. It's all or nothing, right? It's not granular, and then 3 max is the lowest scoring card in the deck, because all the other ones are 5 or more minimum.
Well, it's probably it's the easiest to score.
It is. You're holding your own deployment, right? So,
because you're always trying to defend yours, because you don't want them to be getting deployed behind enemy lines, capturing the objective. So, in most games, you're trying to bubble out and hold your home anyway. So, I'm always happy when I'm drawn. I'm like, sweet, 3 points. I don't have to do anything. And most of the time, if someone wants to come deny it, they have to throw themselves so far into your zone, it's really going to put them out of position just to try to deny you 3 points.
Well, let me
And-
explain. Let me explain why this might be a trap. So getting 3 points for free is good, but it doesn't encourage you to play actively, and it definitely doesn't encourage you to like go score any like primary or push a differential or anything like that, which I dislike personally. But the reason this is so bad is because if this card gets denied, so because remember this is the only card where it scores at the end of your opponent's turn. If your opponent
Right.
sees you have this and they're playing, let's say they're playing, Space Wolf Stormlance, or they're playing, I don't know, 3-inch Deep Strike Monolith Hypercrypt, or they're playing, I don't know. There's a bunch of armies.
World Eaters.
World Eaters, yeah. Or they're playing, Black Templars Gladius. There's all these armies that have the advance in charge that can actually come threat your home objective, or they can put 3-inch Deep Strike and Scepters down, or a 3-inch Monolith.
Yeah.
There's just all these things that can come down and steal one objective, right? It's very very strong right now. Very valid strategy. So what happens if that happens and you're holding Defend Stronghold? Here's what happens. It's the worst thing that can happen in the entire mission deck. Not only do you not score the 3, which is the lowest value, you just held the card, so you're holding it at the start of your turn again. So not only did you didn't score the primary when you start your turn for your home objective, so you're most likely you're losing 5. You also just lost another 3, and you actually lost more than 3 because you're holding a dead card when you started your turn.
Yes.
So the reason it's so bad, the only way I think that they could balance this is if they gave it some kind of clause where you can like auto cycle it after they deny it. So if they take your home and you lose Defend Stronghold, I think it should have a clause where you like shuffle it or something. It doesn't have that. So it's basically like a triple jeopardy. So if you don't score Defend Stronghold, like it's basically a triple jeopardy.
Well, I figure if they take your home stronghold, you probably lost the game anyway, because now they're getting capture enemy outpost. They can just behind enemy lines deploy teleport homers. Like, even if you don't have Defend Stronghold, if they take your home base, you pretty much lost the game.
And it's only 12 points too.
Well, yeah, Matt, I don't really agree with that, because it's like a lot of these like scoring is just based around OC, right? So like just teleporting that monolith that's just based on the monolith showing up. You don't have to kill anything, right? If you leave a spot where the monolith just shows up and denies you, they didn't have to kill any models to do that, So
if you deploy so that someone can just drop in on if you have your unit sitting so someone can drop within 3 or 9 and touch your objective, then you deserve to lose that point.
Get better, noob.
That's true. It's a skill.
Like
that's a skill issue.
It's not a skill. You have a little 5-man unit. You can put it out so no one can land on that objective.
Yeah, and I know people. There are players who like to use like infiltrators, or they like to use like screen units and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. So and then once that happens, like you basically don't even have to worry about it. Unless they're just charging, unless they're going YOLO, advance and charging infiltrators, trying to deny Defend Stronghold. That seems like kind of a long shot.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, maybe I never leave home without 2 units of infiltrators, so maybe that's why I have a little different view on it.
But yeah, I think that pretty much shapes it up. And Defend Stronghold is a lot better, I would say, if you play infiltrators. Exactly. So so this is Defend is just one to watch out for. All right. So category 3. I call this primary adjacent missions. These are more challenging than the first 2 categories. Requires more planning and execution in your list selection and deployment. So this is a lot of these revolve around positioning, and then some of them are like more specific. So engage on all fronts. This is an old one. Had this in old editions of the game. It's basically you can't use battle shocks to do this, and then you have to be wholly. You have to have a unit wholly within a quarter. And then it counts for 3 quarters are worth 3, and 4 quarters are worth 5, which is the max. The units that score this can't be within 3 inches at all of any other quarter. So what that does, think of it as like a line. There's like a 6-inch river, a 6-inch river right through the middle. Hot dog and hamburger. So anything that's touching those like 6-inch rivers aren't eligible to score. But then anything in the corners or anywhere else on the board will score this.
Yep.
So this is a good one. Some of these engaged and behind are also it benefits you a lot if you're a faster army. For example, like Tau and Eldar. or if you, like we were saying, if you take Space Marine Outriders that auto advance 18, it can make it very easy to score these. Just because if you have units that move 12 or 18 or more, it makes it very easy to position and then just automatically score points, which is basically always a benefit to you. I would say probably can be more challenging if you're playing a slower army. Maybe like Custodes and like Death Guard are a little bit slower armies, can be more challenging to score these.
It can be more challenging for orcs too, because orcs have such big squads, right? They're not 5-man units; they're usually 10-man units, and to get out of that 3 inches from all the corners, right? It can be a little bit challenging. It's a lot easier for like my world eaters because they're usually small 3-man, 6-man units. But for orcs, it could be a little bit of a challenge, just to let everyone know who does play orcs.
Yep, absolutely. And I guess you said Storm Boys, right? Storm Boys are good at scoring engage and behind and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, but you could take Storm Boys in 5. I'm talking more so like if you have just regular infantry.
Yeah.
Oh,
right,
yeah,
just regular boys, because they're 10-man squads. You can't take them in 5s.
Yeah, the bigger the units, the harder it is to score those objectives where you have to be outside of
the 3 inches. Yeah, it's not super hard, but you have to be cognizant of that. Like the reason I say this is because when I was playing orcs not last edition, but a couple months ago, right? I didn't realize that because their squads are so big, I had to make sure that they were getting beyond that 3 inches because their squads are so big. And then we're walking into World Eaters being some, MSU units, it's a lot easier to do an engagement on fronts. So.
Yep. And then so some of these positional ones where it's like, you have to be within this area or completely within this area. Think about it like this. So basically the best scoring model in the game is called a Spore Mine. Hands down, it's the best. And I think a Spore Mine is on a 25mm base, which is the smallest base that exists in the game as well.
It is.
So it's literally, and then another thing that's like, I would say probably number 2 would be like Sisters of Battle Crusaders, which I believe are 2 25mm bases. So not only are they're cheap, so a Spore Mine basically costs 0 points, right? Because a Biovore spits it out, and then those Sisters of Battle Crusaders cost 25 points. So not only did you invest almost no points into this, the footprint is so small that it's almost impossible to screen it out. So when that Spore Mine comes down, it's going to be there and then it's going to score. It's basically like ideal. So think about
what is it? The Calidus?
Calidus is really good. Calidus is 132mm, but she's expensive, right? She's like 90 points. So the Spore Mine does it a lot better for like 0.
Yeah. But she can up and down and mess with people's CP. So she's.
Yep. So right here, behind enemy lines. Basically, this is get in your opponent's deployment zone. It requires the unit to be wholly within. 1 unit wholly within is going to be worth 3. 2 units wholly within is going to be worth 5. This can be difficult to score, right? It is, however, this is much easier to score on Hammer Anvil, because Hammer Anvil is where you have the 18-inch deployment, and it's the entire, it's the hamburger, I guess. It's the fat deployment zone. So it's really easy to score this on that because it's you basically can't screen it out, and it's such a big area that it's just easy to get inside the area. Battleshock. So interestingly, Battleshock actually can score behind enemy lines. I'm not sure why. It's not consistent with all the other ones, but Battleshock is fine. And then aircraft are not fine though. You can't zoom your Storm Raven over or whatever and score behind with your aircraft.
I would say it's good on Dawn of War as well.
Yeah, because you got the full 60-inch edge on Dawn of War. It gives you a lot of space. Yeah,
it's good in tactical. I don't like it for fixed because if I know you take that as fixed, I can deploy my army just to deny you that secondary.
Yep.
But as tactical, I'm not going to sit there the whole game denying my deployment zone. So probably find a chance to sneak it in at some point.
Yep. So that's another engage in behind are just positional ones. It so you would essentially score this in the movement phase. So keep that in mind. You could also score this. You could also score these if you think of them together. Like let's say you do a charge, you kill your target, you gotta, you maybe have a pile in with the units to try to get into an area, and then you have a consolidate if you're eligible to consolidate as well. So as long as you don't die, after you consolidate or something, or you die in Overwatch or something, you will, score at the kind of like the end of combat rather than the end of movement at the end of the fight phase. So that's another way to think about it. World leaders are always going to be charging anyway, so it's like they really have no problem trying to score behind enemy lines.
Yeah, and
but it still sucks doing it turn 1.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and this goes back to what we were talking earlier about building your list for tactical, having units with the speed and ability to get there. And when I say speed, I don't just mean movement, like the Votan Terminators that can pick up and read Deep Strike, and anything like that where they have, or just units you have in Deep Strike that could just, units that have the ability to get places when you need them to. Like Inceptors are great for this. Like, there's just lots of stuff that can get places for you when you need to score the objectives.
I mean, it works well also with assassins if you go second, right? So if you go bottom of 1, do a WTC rules, you could deep strike into, you could deep strike in turn 1. So it works really well for assassins because they have a smaller base too. But that's very selective in what armies you can work with, and which is a good point that Maxwell brought up too. Max had a question. Would you guys consider other assassins for the same job, deep strike, lack of Vex style abilities?
Possibly, but the Calidus has the ability to go back into reserves at the end of your opponent's turn, so you can keep dropping or placing and scoring objectives, which is what makes her the best.
That's right.
Because you can consistently do it as long as you keep her alive and drop her places she's safe.
Yep.
Yeah,
so you can do it with others, but once they're down, they're only scoring or fighting in the area you dropped them.
Right.
Yeah, I think like Matt said, I think you want the uppy downies. The other three, what is it? The Eversor, the Vindicare, and the Calexis. They don't have any kind of uppy downy or anything, so they're really just not. They're not as good as the.
No, if you bring them, you're bringing them for other reasons.
Yeah.
You're bringing them.
There's reasons why all Marines bring the Calidus and Knights players.
Yep.
Yeah, the Calidus is basically like the Space Marine superhero. That's how I think of her. So she's really good. All right, so these two are a little bit more challenging. Storm Hostile. So Storm Hostile will reshuffle turn 1. Basically, I use the word steal. What this does is it checks if your opponent controls an objective. If they do, and then at the end of your turn, if you take one of those objectives from them, then you score 5. So keep in mind, this does not score if it's no man's land. Like if no one has control of it it checks control at the start of the turn, right? So if it's, let's say that like there's a huge battle going on and you have you have 10 orcs fighting 10 intercessors, that actually means at the start of the turn when this would check, no one controls it, right? Because it's zero, the OC is zeroed out. So they actually have to actively control it for this to trigger for you. I get the rider here, which basically never happens, is if the enemy is on 0 objectives when you draw this, then if you just walk onto 1 or whatever, then you score 5. So this almost never happens, because I think if you're on 0 objectives at the start of the turn, the game is probably going to be over anyway.
The only time I've seen people on 0 objectives, if it's like turn 5 and they've maxed primary, and you have like overwhelming, whatever the ones where you have to kill units off objectives and stuff, sometimes they'll back off just in case you draw that card if they've already maxed their second primary. But yeah, that's a very rare occasion.
Yeah, and the backing off of objectives thing, that's like you're basically playing 3D chess at that point. However, for purposes of the other one, the one that we just went over, the overwhelming force is actually category 1. Sometimes if you have units that are very close to death, it might be worth like just moving them off of objectives so they're not an easy target for overwhelming force.
Right.
And Storm Hostile it's similar, but a little but still a basic idea.
Well, especially because you'll have already scored primary, and if they're going to die anyway, just move them off the objective. If you know you're not going to hold it, don't leave them on there just in case they draw that.
Exactly, because it doesn't benefit you at all. Yep. The last one, Tempting Target. This one is pretty cool. So it's a little bit weird. Your opponent, you draw this. Your opponent says, and you say, which no man's land objective would you like to tempt? They have to pick one, and then if you get control of the one that they picked, you score 5. So this is this is pretty interesting because this is often like kind of an all or nothing sort of situation. A lot of times what you'll see is like you'll see someone's whole army that's kind of castled up, or they're positioned up all on one of the no man's land objectives, right? That's a very common way to play 40k, where you make like you make a triangle, or you just make a line, like you have your whole army in a line or in a triangle formation. Generally, they're always just going to pick. They might pick the center, which is easier, but generally they're going to pick their really tough one, and you just can't score this. So a lot of times, like you may just have to discard this and get the CP because they have too much stuff. It's not worth you trading your whole army trying to score tempting target for 5 points. It's just not worth, like the question that they're asking you is far more difficult than like what you get out of trying to accomplish the mission that they gave you, right? So I'm not in love with this one. It's not granular. A lot of times it's just going to be discarded, and it's also a win more because let's say that you're playing Chaos Knights and you just flood the board and dominate the board. If you draw this like anytime during like the first 2 or 3 battle rounds, this is just going to be an auto 5 because you have all your assets pushed up the board into no man's land already. So if they say, hey, I'm picking this one or I'm picking this one, you're gonna have control of it at the end of your turn anyway. So it's kind of a foregone score.
It's actually very good, and I this actually happened to one of my games. Turn 4 or 5 with supply drop.
Oh yeah, where the
yeah, with the alpha and omega.
Well, there's only one. There's only one.
Well, there's only 1 or 2 that they can choose, and you're like, this is easy for me.
Well, this is a good one where you just advance your outriders up and take it. This is the outrider show now.
Well, yeah. So ideally, you have you have an outrider unit or whatever, which is OC 6, and then your dumb opponent just left 5 infiltrators on the objective, which are only OC 5, and your outriders, they don't have the charge. They just auto advance 18 over and just score you all your points. Because 6 is greater than 5, right? Yep.
That's the math I was taught.
Are we promoting selling outriders on this show? What is going on?
Well, I've got to justify all the ones and the ATVs sitting on my shelf, so
that's.
I already spent the money for them, so I got to tell myself I did it for a good reason.
Yeah, everyone's dusting off their Indomitus kits.
Indomitus boxes this week.
There's a mission.
Outriders and Eradicators, guys. Just build your list around it.
No, Inceptors. Inceptors are actually the
Inceptors.
Inceptors.
Because I've been talking about Outriders, but really Inceptors are the scoring unit. But they're the thing is Inceptors are like they're real expensive. They're like 130 points now. So it's
that's the big
And they can't come in turn 1.
And they're doing the same job as like 25-point Crusaders or a 0-point Spore Mine, and like that seems like a lot of points to spend like for the same sort of job.
Well, depending on what objective they're doing, a lot of times they can drop in and still shoot that plasma.
Yep.
Yeah, for behind, yeah, for sure. For behind
area denial, just drop them on an object.
Yeah,
I've had plenty of times where I got to drop them in and just shoot that plasma at something and kill it before they die.
And if they're not sitting on the objective in the center for the objective marker itself, they're far off in the other end, and some Inceptors will just take it over. I love.
And honestly, Inceptors have been the best thing for me when I played Tyranids because they can drop in and kill that Biovore.
They're so good. They're so good.
Yeah, once you take out those Biovores, the Tyranids actually have to learn how to play 40k on the fly.
Yeah.
They're not killing Angron. I've witnessed that.
Well,
yeah.
Not much does. Not till Russ comes back.
So, based on what Lewis said, he was talking about playing Supply Drop. There's 2 missions that are in the packet. One is called Supply Drop. The other one's called the Ritual. Those missions are special because they specify that your home objective is not worth any primary points.
Correct.
So that is something you have to keep in mind for the tactical deck, because people will think, oh, I'm just going to leave my primary objective behind because it won't score me anything on primary. Right? Well, wrong, because it's still that primary objective is still there. It won't score you anything, but it still matters for secondary. So it'll matter for extend battle lines because you have to hold your home. It'll matter for defend stronghold, and then it'll matter also for capture enemy outposts. So you don't want to give your opponent a free capture enemy outpost. So keep in mind for purposes of the secondary on those missions, your home objective still matters even if it's not scoring you primary.
Yes.
And if you abandon your deployment zone, you might get a Necron monolith just suddenly deep striking into it.
Well, and you need it in case you draw the best secondary card in the deck, defend stronghold.
Oh god. Okay, so moving into the hardest category, which is also the most complicated.
Yes.
Going off the rails here. Category 4. I'm calling these conflicting missions because to try to figure out how to score these and like to continue to play Warhammer is like usually going to be frustrating. Not always, because honestly, cleanse and deploy are pretty easy, but investigate and capture can create like a Rube Goldberg kind of conundrum of like, can I score this? Can I get wholly within 9? Can I even touch my opponent's home objective and so on? So I'm going to say they directly conflict with the primary positioning and attacking. This is the highest level of difficulty. So this is the ones where you really have to. You're going to have to plan for this. You're going to have units in reserve or deep strike. They're going to be dedicated to doing this stuff, and you're going to have units set aside that are not fighting, that are thinking about doing this stuff. So this is the whole premise here, is that instead of like saying, oh, I'm going to shoot, or I'm going to charge, or I'm going to hide, or instead of playing normal Warhammer, you have to basically play advanced Warhammer. That's a good way to think about it. So capture enemy outpost is a little bit easier one, but it's capture the enemy home objective, or basically just go and control it. As long as you control it at the end of your turn, you score 8 points. So 8 caps at 8. That's the high. It's just 8 or nothing. It's all or nothing. That's the highest value. The highest value card. It's one of the only 3 cards. Bring it down, investigate, and capture that are worth 8 VP. The other one here, investigate, is also very difficult, and that's also worth 8 VP. So there is a little bit of there's a curve here where these harder secondaries generally are worth more. These 2 are, the other 2 aren't, but 8 is the highest value you can expect to see. So I wouldn't say there's not any trick for capture more than what we already talked about. Just keep in mind if you're doing like charging, pile and consolidate, 3-inch deep strikes. Those are all good ways. Charging is a good way to score capture. So charging, putting units down, even if it involves putting units down from deep, like putting a Terminator unit down, putting a Calidus Assassin down, with a 9-inch and trying to roll the 9-inch charge. That's still a viable strategy to try to score the 8 points. And I have seen capture enemy outpost be very swingy, because generally like when you're defending your home objective, it's only going to be 1 unit, right? It might be 1 unit of cultists. It might be it might be a unit of infiltrators. Generally, there's only going to be 1 unit there. So usually 1 unit is something that's killable. Mm-hmm. So capture. Definitely an important card. Not super complicated either. Very interesting card. Encourages aggressive play. So investigate is almost kind of like the opposite of capture, because it specifies that your units go and do actions. We'll talk about actions in a second here, but these last 3 are basically do actions. And an action is basically like we'll deploy it, or we'll talk about it in a second here. But it's basically like you put down your weapons and you're not eligible to shoot or charge, so you do it instead of shooting. So a unit wholly within 9 inches of each corner can do the action for 2 VP per corner. So you can do the easy one is. The easy one is just, you do your corner and you score, mm-hmm. You have a unit. And the thing that sucks about this is it says wholly. I would actually like this a lot better if it wasn't wholly, because what this means is like when you set up, a lot of times you'll have units that move 6, like, you might have your scouts or your cultists or whatever. A lot of things move 6 is a very common move value. So you have to measure the point from the corner, and then you have to measure 15. So the entire base, your entire unit has to be within 15 of the corner. You actually want to pre-measure. You want to pre-measure this, because if you draw this card and you're out by like half an inch or an inch, and there's one guy that's forward, you can't score this at all, and it just sucks.
And that's why I hate this. I hate this one so much, especially for world eaters. I hate it because we don't want to invest in no corners. So.
Exactly. Yeah. This is terrible for world eaters. This is really, really good for NIDs. Like, it's a consistent theme. You can have a unit just come in. If you have a unit in deep strike, unit in reserve, if you have a spore mine coming down, you can have all these units just come down and do the action, and that's it.
Yeah. And most of my lists, I have it built where most turns I can get 4 off this, and I'm not really trying for more. If I get lucky later in the game, I might get 6, but you really can't plan on getting 8 with most lists and most armies unless you're in a really weird niche lucky situation. You can't count on 8.
So 2 is fine. 4 is like the average, I think, like Matt said. 6 is really good. 6 means like you actually put down a unit, you dedicate it to go wide, like you have a dedicated scoring unit.
So that's where you draw it on the right turn where you still have stuff in deep strike.
And then eight is more of a list. That's more of a list construction thing, because eight means. Keep in mind those 4 units that are doing this, they can't shoot and they can't charge. So you have you basically have 4 units in all 4 corners of the table, and the corners are also, they're off of the primary, right? So all 4 of those units are not affecting your primary score. They're not affecting any other part of the game. So it's like you really want cheap units, like maybe, I don't know, scouts. You want 50 point units, 40 point units. You want as cheap as possible. Just set up the unit, do the action, score the points.
Crew, lots and lots of little crew units.
Yeah, actually, yeah. And then these last 2 are also involved doing actions. For all 3 of these action missions, you can't be battle shocked, so you're not eligible to investigate, cleanse, or deploy if you are battle shocked. So they're pretty consistent theme, not allowing battle shocks for a lot of the scoring and stuff.
Yeah, and cleanse, unlike the other 2, it's easy to get in position for it. It's just having to do the action to give up your offense is the difficult part.
Yeah, so cleanse is really cool. Cleanse is a lot better designed. So this is you're on an objective. You can declare it during the shooting phase on an objective, in not your home objective, but no man's land. I think so. It could be either, I think, enemy deployment zone. Oh yeah, it just says not within your deployment zone.
Yep.
So no man's land or the enemy home objective. So you do the action. It's 3 VP for doing it on one objective, and then it's 2, and then it's 5. Sorry, it should say 5 VP. 5 VP for doing 2 objectives. So something real good about this is you can declare this cleanse even if you don't control the objective. So meaning if you know you're gonna have your whatever, if you know you're gonna have your blade guard charge in and clear off the objective and get control of it by the end of the turn, you can set up your rhino, your scouts or whatever to do the cleanse, to just one guy touching the objective, and then provided at the end of the turn you do control it like you were planning, then you will still score the cleanse. So it doesn't check control of the objective when you declare the cleanse. It only checks at the end of the turn when you go to score the cleanse.
Correct.
So keep in mind, yeah, you can declare first and then score at the end for cleanse. And then the last one, let's see here.
Deploy teleport Homer.
Yeah, deploy Homer. So these ones can both be taken as fixed as well. These are a little bit more passive. They don't, you're not doing any like combats or anything. So this is just within 6 of the center. It's not wholly within like area denial. You can have any unit deploys within 6, in 6 of the center point of the board. That's worth 3. And then if you're just within the enemy deployment zone, doesn't have to be wholly. So very flexible on this one as well. That's worth 5. So this is great, right? Because it's not only can you do it different ways, it doesn't require you to be wholly within. So that means like on GW train, you could have like a unit. You can have just one model in a unit, or one corner, like the corner of your impulsor, or a scout, or you can have any unit, just as long as like the corner or one model is within 6 of the center. You can do the deploy, score the 3, and then you don't even have to stretch and get the extra 2 points by going into the deployment zone if you don't have to. So this is definitely a good one. You can score turn 1. Pretty easy overall.
And that's another nice one for like the up down units.
Yep.
All right. Max asked me about the Hammerfall bunker. You should go watch the video Nick and I did on the Space Marine Index when it came out. Or the Space. Nick is pretty sure an all Hammerfall list would have done great at some tournaments.
So, oh man, it's terrible.
I know, but you thought it was great when we did that video.
Well, yeah, but they actually nerfed it. When we did the Index, they nerfed it a lot. They took away everything. Yeah, they took away all the stuff. Well, because so in the Hammerfall bunker, I mean, this is a tangent, but the Hammerfall bunker in the Index, it could shoot 4 times, so it could have like 4 full shooting activations, which was funny. But then they got rid of that. It's just completely gone now.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they're just trying to take fortifications out of the game. But anyway, so that covers all of them. And then we're gonna go into some of the more complicated stuff with the actions here, because there's kind of like a terms and conditions, like T and C's to some of these actions. So here's actions explained. I think this involves, it's 3 or 4 of the secondaries. It's the difficult ones that we just went over.
Yeah.
So whenever you do these actions, you can't be battle shocked ever, or you're not even eligible to declare the action. The actions are worded in a way, when you read the card, you won't see the word action. They got rid of, I don't know why, but they got rid of the word action, but it's still the same idea.
It is.
So you can elect during the shooting phase. So it doesn't have to be start or end. It's just during your shooting phase, like when you select the unit to activate, they can elect to action instead of doing their normal shooting activation. What that means is that they have to be eligible to shoot. However, it's been clarified that units that have no ranged weapons, such as 8-bound or just anything that has no ranged weapon, is still eligible to do actions.
Correct.
So after you do the action, it locks you out of doing a few actions. So you're not once you declare the action for that unit, you're not going to be eligible to do a shoot, and you're also not eligible to charge. So you just flat out can't do those things. If your unit that's doing this, there's weird game states that can happen. Let's say that your unit gets charged after the action. I'm not really, maybe like a heroic intervention, or it's the unit has like a pistol. So pistol lets you declare while you're in combat. If you're in an ongoing fight, you're still eligible to fight. You're just not eligible to charge. So you can actually still fight as normal while doing the action, which is pretty cool. So some of the this is kind of the nitty gritty right here. So these keywords that affect ranged weapons and affect shooting will let you. So pistol and assault are types on weapons that can be like on a model or unit. And then there's abilities that will grant a unit the ability to advance and shoot or fall back and shoot. So the cool thing about how this is worded is that all 4 of these basically special rules, special abilities can affect your ability to do actions. So a pistol, if you have a pistol type anywhere in your unit, that'll give that unit that. So if you have one pistol in a unit of 20 models, that will give the unit the eligibility to declare an action while they're in combat, because a pistol specifies in your shooting phase that model can shoot, so you're good. Same thing with assault. Assault allows you to advance and charge, so advance and action in the same way. Same thing with advance and shoot. Advance and shoot is basically going to be the same as having assault weapons in the whole unit on all ranged weapons, and then fall back and shoot, same thing basically. So fall back and shoot, it would be the same as like doing a fall back in action.
That's one of the reasons I like Gladius and Marines, is hold on to that tactical doctrine for late game. Just do whatever you need to do still.
I love Gladius. I've been playing Gladius nonstop, and it's insanely flexible for scoring, shooting, fighting. It's also got the 1 CP where you can put any one of your units in any one of the doctrines as well. So it's just you can just get out of like any type of situation.
Yeah, you got Devastator for advance and shoot 1 turn, and then you got the fall back and shoot, fall back. Like, I love it. Like, there's other stuff that gets more. My brain's not thinking of the word. Just where it specializes in more one thing, but I just like the versatility, especially if you're playing tactical, of Gladius.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I think that's it. All right, and then I think that's the last slide. Let's see. Yeah, so the last slide has to do with the high value cards. So this is a little bit of a gambling thing, because you've got between your new orders and your discarding and your scoring and all the timings that we talked about and all these things. Like, what it really comes down to is just points. Like, you don't want to get crushed and score 15 secondary and your opponent scored 30, right? So what this comes into is kind of the high value cards. So when you're thinking about 40k in general, when you're thinking about your list, how you want to play the game, your tactics, your strategy, and so on, you actually want to consider these 3 cards a lot. It does matter quite a bit. The first 2 more than the third one, because the third one a lot of times is going to be out of your control. Capture Enemy Outpost is basically the best card in the deck, because in simple terms, the way you can think about Capture Outpost is you're going to steal one of their objectives. Of course, it's their home objective, but at the end of the day, it still is just a regular size objective, and you score 8 points just for capturing something. Part of the reason why this is so good is because it can possibly deny them scoring extend battle lines and defend stronghold as well. Those are ones that we talked about that will key off of their home objective. So Capture Enemy Outpost is just extremely good. When you see it, you got to pre-measure, see if you can actually score it at all, and then you also should keep a mental tab on whether or not your opponent has seen the card yet. Because if you guys both draw capture turn 1, you both discard it, then you're not going to have that bomb. These are basically bombs, right? They're not going to have that capture outpost bomb in the deck anymore, because it's already been discarded, or it's already been scored, or whatever.
Yeah, and it's the hardest to get for most armies, which is why it's worth so many points.
It is very hard to score. Yeah. The next bomb is Investigate Signals. We were just talking about all this as well. So good units that score these are just small footprint, cheap as possible. Spore mines, Calidus, scouts, mandrakes, uppy downy units. So ideally you never want to have units that are just chilling in the corners of the map. But the way to get around this is you have units that uppy downy, right? So that's going to be your Space Marine scouts, your mandrakes, your Calidus assassin. Because what'll happen is they're already up. They go up at the end of your opponent's turn. They come down, they score the secondary, and then they're just going to go up again. So they're going to be able to reposition, and you'll get the value. You'll get the value out of them on ongoing turns. They don't get like stuck and put in a corner where they're just where they're ineligible to help with any other parts of the game. Another cool thing about investigate, this is kind of a weird like nuance of it. If let's say that you're going first, and then you draw investigate on turn 2, so you draw at top of 2. You put down your stuff, and then you score 8. You put down you deploy your units, strategic reserve, deep strike, and you put units in all 4 corners, and you score 8. And then you say, okay, I scored 8 on that. I did, yada yada yada. You pass turn. Your opponent, bottom of 2, they draw investigate. You basically just put them in a spot where they can't score this because you already have units in all 4 corners, which essentially means that you screened out all 4 corners already. And because this keys off of wholly within 9 of the corner for investigate, it basically makes them it's virtually impossible for them to score it unless they have 3-inch deep strikes they want to dedicate to scoring. So it's a weird.
I can see situations where you being there might actually make it easier for them if they have like assault units. Now they might be able to charge into the corner.
Yeah, but investigate is an action, right? So you have to declare it during the shooting phase.
Oh, investigate's an action. All right, yeah then never mind.
So 3-inch deep strike gets around it, but there's so few units that do that might like want to like counterplay you. And
you can drop right where the 3-inch won't let them get there.
Right, that's another thing is like if they already have a unit there, and then you drop in 3 inches to try to score after them, then that unit's probably just going to kill your unit that you put in because the investigating unit can't shoot or charge, right? They can only investigate. So that can be like a big swing in the points if both players like draw investigate back to back. So weird interaction there. The last one is bring it down. Basically, I said go big or go home. Don't undercommit if you need to score this. Small vehicles like Tau suits are easy points. We already talked about this. The thing with vehicles and monsters is they're all high toughness value, which just means they're hard to wound, right? They have lots of wounds. A lot of them have invuln saves, good armor saves. They're difficult to kill. And then when they die, they explode, which can affect your ability to continue doing your turn potentially. So you want to, a lot of times if you're trying to score bring it down, or you need to score bring it down, don't split attacks, don't undercommit. Just be like, I have to kill this Carnifex unit, I have to kill this Crisis unit. You want to set up your entire army. I'm going to shoot this unit, I'm going to charge this unit, I'm going to maximize my scoring, and I'm going to kind of put everything else on the back burner, while I focus this unit down and score my points. So don't undercommit, don't split attacks if you're trying to kill vehicles, monsters.
And I'd say that goes for lots of stuff. Never math hammer, oh, this should on average kill that. You need something to back it up because your dice aren't always going to go average for you.
Exactly. Like if you're just set yourself up for success. If you're scoring your secondary, if you're scoring primary, it's all dependent on killing this Carnifex unit. Don't undercommit it ever. Don't like say, oh, the average says this. Like no, just say like I'm doing this and this and this. You're just you got layers of damage, I guess.
And when possible, use the parts of the layers that only have them as an option first. That way, if you do succeed the way you hoped or quicker than you hoped, the other stuff isn't left without other options.
That's
so that you don't lose their attacks for no reason.
I agree.
All right, guys.
And just a small little portion. Thank you very much, Nick, for everything, man. So a small little portion that we kind of wanted to tack on to the OCS training today was I've been noticing in a lot of events, a lot of people have been it's been a challenge for people to wrap their minds around the while this model is leading a unit. Just a little bit of a clarification, and please, Nick and Matt, make sure to chime in if you have any opinions as well. But here's a few of the rules that I have for you guys, all right? So this rule only applies while the model is part of the attached unit. If not leading a unit, that rule has no effect, right? So the rule ceases to apply if the bodyguard unit or model is destroyed, period. So it's and it's sequential. There's a specific timing to it, right? So once the attacking unit's attacks have been resolved, the rule doesn't apply any longer. Meaning, when you're attacked by an 8-bound unit, right, and all of those attacks are resolved, and they kill the bodyguard unit, that model, that character model that has that role while leading this unit, no longer applies to anything else that's rolled over or to himself, right?
Correct.
So just kind of wanted to get everybody an idea of exactly how that works. I know this has been talked about a couple of times. It's been a challenge for a lot of people just trying to get their minds wrapped around it, like I said. But yeah, it's completely after all attacks are resolved. Just so to make sure everyone's clear. If you have any questions on that, please make sure to send it in the chat below. Also, I know we ran over time a little bit of extended time here. We have around 5 minutes left. So we're going to continue to talk about more Leviathan games, specifically in the pamphlet itself, right, on the following episode. So make sure to tune in to that, right? In 2 weeks, we're going to have Onslaught Gaming episode 6. And in that show, we're going to continue to talk about the missions. Nick is going to bring his wisdom. Matt's going to bring his wisdom. And I'm going to bring you a little bit of my wisdom and what I have to bring for everyone, all right? And that's going to be specifically on missions A, E, F, M, O. For those of you who are attending the ATC event, those are particular to that event itself. So we're going to give you some tips and tricks for the ATC, how to go throughout all of those missions, how to kind of set up your either tactical or fix for those missions as well, how to kind of play depending. Now, there's a wide variety of different armies, so we can't cover every single army that we're going to talk about, but maybe Nick will cover a couple of his armies that he plays with, Matt, whatever he plays with, specifically his Space Wolves. And as you know, me, I'm always World Eaters. I have a new list that I'm putting together, something a little bit different. It's a combination of what's going around in the meta right now. So we'll be able to review a little bit about that and give you our insights on those. Matt, Nick, do you have anything to say before we go here shortly after the questions for the audience?
Yeah, I guess I'll have to try to find some wisdom so I can live up to what you promised the people for next time.
Oh man. Lewis, are you gonna play those Hellbrutes?
So, 2 Hellbrutes and 3 Mauler Fiends. And
it's pretty good.
I'm either gonna change out the 8-bound for Lord of Skulls, or keeping the 8-bound with some spawn. I kind of want to play a little bit differently too. It hasn't been bad having just 1 Jackal unit. I've tried 2 Jackal units before. I've noticed that with 2 Jackal units, your primary and some of your secondaries, depending on how they're selected, right, I score very high and very quickly.
Yeah.
And those Jackals really help out with that. Specifically, we're deploy Servo Skulls, right? They make life so much easier.
Oh, yeah.
Currently, I don't actually run those at my events. I think they're very swingy. I think that whoever goes first, and if you're very knowledgeable, will win that game, 9 out of 10 times. So I usually don't run those missions, but when I actually go to other people's events, when I'm not running events myself, I know that I might run into those, so I like having the Jackals and things like that. Always bring an Angron. I also dropped Invocatus for a Lord on Juggernaut. The Lord on Juggernaut has a lot of opportunities to take a lot of secondary abilities, right? And just basically be a little bit of a harassment, right? To certain units, like to scouts, he'll chew up a scout unit very easily. An assassin character,
He was always worth the points when I like the Jackals and the Juggernaut Lord because he's only 100 points, right? So he was always really good value.
Well, unless you take him with the favorite of Khorne like I do.
I mean, it's still okay. I don't like that it costs points. Like it's a lot of points.
No. Like you said, I think he's worth it. I think he's worth it, specifically if you're using him, if you have a particular type of role for him, right? And I usually have roles for all of these models that I select, like Nick was talking about before and Matt were talking about, having Outriders or having Assassins and things like that. To have a particular role, or having 4 units for my most hated investigate signals, right? I hate that mission so much. It doesn't work well with World Eaters. A little bit better with Orcs because I'm an Orc player as well. So it works slightly better with Orcs. I wouldn't say it's perfect for Orcs either. Sometimes you don't want to invest 20 dudes and have to plug them in within 9 inches, right? Like Nick was talking about earlier. They should really change that to just being within instead of wholly within.
Yeah.
It's just so challenging unless you have these cheeky little armies like Tyranids and Space Marines. They have these spore mines or these assassins. They can just do all that. Maxwell, I know you had a question earlier, and this is open floor for anybody else who has a question. But basically, if you do take other assassins, like that's a cheeky way to use them for investigate signals, but that's hoping that you actually draw that card, right? So that's very swingy in a tactical mission situation. I mean,
yeah. And then they're stuck there, and a lot of them have other buffs and rules that you bring them to achieve, and if you put them in the corner, you're not doing them.
Exactly. So it's the pros over the cons, right? Are you investing too many points for what you're doing for your secondaries? Like just Nick and Matt talking about it, right? I'm a firm believer that Outriders at 80 points for 3 models, right? It's a cheeky way to get area denial, right? Or a lot of other different things. I think that's pretty awesome, especially with those secondaries where you don't need to do an action. I mean, you can obviously do an action with them, but that you can't advance unless you have assault weapons, blah, 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 blah. So everyone has to just remember, right, that if you don't have assault weapons, you can't advance. I've been through that, and I had to remind myself all the time because Orcs actually have assault weapons, less now than they've had before. But I was so used to moving and advancing with Orcs and then doing actions because they had assault weapons. Or World Eaters don't have that. So I don't have the ability to move in advance and then do actions with them because they don't have those assault weapons. So please feel free.
Oh yeah, Max. Those units they're okay because they're cheap, right? So it's like if you only have that points, just take one of those cheap units. However, scouts are better. So scouts are way better than those units because scouts do all that and they infiltrate and they have the uppity downy. So like if you're looking at from the Space Marine perspective, just get the extra 20, get the extra 15, 25 points and get scouts because scouts are just they've been. I mean,
what's the points difference between the two? Do you know?
Scouts are 65.
But in Custodes or Knights, where you only have expensive units, I think they have a lot more play there.
Absolutely.
Oh, for the exaction squads and naval boarding,
because you don't have options to cheap little throwaway units to just sit on your back objective or do little.
How many points are the exaction squads?
Those aren't good. Don't play those. The two that you would look at if you're looking for if you play Knights, you don't know about this is a Knight thing specifically because they need cheap units. They just don't have anything in their book, right? It also is fine for Space Marines, but the cheapo units that you would take just for scoring purposes would be Inquisitorial Posse is 40. It's 40 points for 4 models. The other one that's good is Voidsman at Arms, which is 5 points for 5 models for 50 points. So those are both good. They're just super cheap. Those are the cheapest things you can take.
Yeah, the exaction were the best option.
110.
Exactly. They were the best option.
Well, they nerfed it.
That's what I'm saying.
It used to be 35 for 5, and they just
because everybody was running it. Every Imperialist had it, so they whacked it. Yeah, they whacked it.
Like everybody's not running Calidus.
I actually hope they bring back the Space Cops. The Space Cops are awesome. They're really cool models. I don't care if they're 40 points or 35 points. I mean, I didn't think it was a problem. It was probably fine.
So Brink. Here we go. So Brink of SB. Do Storm Ravens and Centurion Devastators Assault have a place in Black Templar armies within Righteous Crusaders, Gladius, or Iron Storm? I'll let you take. You guys are the Space Marine heretics. I'll let you take the floor on that.
What do you think, Matt?
I haven't played much Black Templars, but in Wolves, I just find Centurions cost more than what I get out of them. But I haven't played Black Templars, so I'm not sure if they fit in with Black Templars.
Let's see. I'm playing Templars right now. So Centurions, I would say no. I would say Centurions don't fit in Black Templars. that unit it's a real expensive unit. It doesn't necessarily do anything that's better than other units, because it's like a hybrid. It's really slow. It moves 4. It's like shooting and fighting. If you wanted just a durable unit that has flamethrowers, you can consider taking like 3 assault centurions. I wouldn't mess around with the centurion devastators though, because that's a specific thing for playing Vanguard, and also it's so CP hungry that you're at that point you're not playing Black Templars at all. You're playing Ultramarines Vanguard, right? So Centurions are out generally. Storm Ravens are really good. So you could play Storm Ravens in Iron Storm. They're especially really good. And you can also put if you're playing Righteous Crusaders or Iron Storm, I would say in those two, I would say you could take a Storm Raven, and then if you wanted to, you could put a Redemptor Dread or like a Brutalis. What's it called? Brutalis Dread, the one with the claws. You can put one of those dreads inside of it. That's really good because it shows up turn 1, like it's in hover mode. It flies over, it drops off the dreadnought onto a objective, and then everything shoots. So the shooting obviously is really good in Iron Storm, and then in Righteous Crusaders, it's going to have a 6-up feel no pain on all that stuff too. So -1 damage with the 6-up feel no pain. Very very durable models.
They're good for Blood Angels too. Storm Ravens are good for Blood Angels. Max actually proved that. He went to a tournament with me. I was playing in a tournament. We were playing in a tournament together. We didn't get to play against each other, unfortunately, but he did very well with Storm Ravens.
Yeah, it's super good. Dropping off dreadnoughts on the objective is always good too.
Yeah,
Space Marines.
I love the Redemptors.
Yeah. And Brink has another question: Storm Ravens or Redeemers? So
Redeemer.
I'll let you guys. Yeah, me too. I was gonna say Redeemers as well. I like Redeemers, but they have a bigger platform.
It's a little tougher, and those flamers in Overwatch are amazing.
Are gross.
Yeah, I'm playing the Redeemer right now, and I'm surprised that they haven't changed it yet, because the flamethrower on the Redeemer does so much damage. It seems like it's doing probably like twice the amount of damage that it should do. Like if it was well balanced. So.
And I just like that Land Raiders are good again.
Yes.
I used to run 2 Terminator squads with Terminator chaplains in Crusaders back in 3rd and 4th edition, and it was so much fun.
Yeah,
Max says run both. That's expensive, man. That's expensive. You don't get a lot of anything else.
Yeah, now you're giving up your ability to play the missions if you put too much points in a couple big units.
Yep. Don't put too many eggs in one basket, as the old phrase goes, right?
Yeah.
So, unless there's any more questions and Nick and Matt have nothing further to say, we're going to bid you adieu.
That's it.
Adieu.
Hey, Lewis, thank you so much. Lewis did all the art. He did all the aliens art for the Leviathan presentation. So it looks awesome. I love those aliens.
Yeah,
this is a team effort.
Nick did most of the research. Lewis did all the graphics. I told him it looked nice.
Matt did all the supervising. Thank you very much, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
He's our in-house editor. So thank you to everyone. Thank you, OCS family, so much. We love it for you being a part of the episode. Make sure to stay tuned for bi-weekly episodes in 2 weeks. We are thinking about upping the frequency. We'll let you know exactly when that happens. Other than that, salute to you, and everyone take care.
Take care, guys.